So even though you're going to get me to look at certain things, you really cannot get me to look at only one side of an object because he'll fall over. Anytime something's found too long, it will look flat, stiff, and attract attention. Hey, this is Chris at Art Secret Studio, and I'm a big fan of telling a story in art and you telling me where to look in your painting. And we have a high school student who rocked it, sorta. He's done a beautiful job, but when I asked him, where is your path and where do you want me to look? He said, well, the eye, almost sounded like I think. Were you guaranteed it was the eye?
You told me it was the eye.
I told you it was the eye. And then what did you say next? How did the conversation go?
I said I guess.
You guess? Did you use that word to me?
I did.
You're kidding.
No, that's why it's up there.
That's why it is up here. You've stopped everyone in the class. We got 30 people in a circle here. You stopped all of their art because you guessed. Yes. And yet we looked at it and said, this is beautiful. We all said, I said, it's one of the nicest anyone's finished. But he got halfway through and I said, uh-oh, wait a minute here. And that's the part I want to talk about, okay? So I do need your attention. Okay, we said, you all know this, so I'm just doing this for the YouTubers. Okay, so you pick a sequential area you want me to look. We call it the macro. And the eye section, he said part of the hair here, whatever this is called, part of the beak, parts of the feather and the wing, parts of the wing, and then in here. And you take me on a journey through a sequential order, and the sum of those found edges tell the story. They tell your story, not my story, I guess. You can't use the word I guess and tell your story. Do you see my problem? But I did ask him something. So let me show you what I really like. And let me show you the part that caught my eye and said, wait a minute, let's talk about this. Okay? So Contrapposto comes from the Italian Renaissance, where Michelangelo is digging up. I don't know if that's true. I read it in a book, and I think it was a romance novel. Michelangelo is digging up these sculpture pieces from all over Rome from Greece, from ancient Greece. And you see the curious boy with a little hint of an S-curve, and then eventually you get this massive S-curve in the Greek sculpture pieces. And the Italians call S-curve contrapposto, and it creates movement. So even though you're going to get me to look at certain things, you really cannot get me to look at only one side of an object because he'll fall over. Anytime something's found too long, it will look flat, stiff, and attract attention. So you have to get me off that edge. And you don't have to get me to the other side. You just have to get me off the edge. How are you going to do that? Well, in painting, you can use contrast. That's black and white. You can use color, bright red, orange, blue, green. You can use texture, thick paint. You can repeat a shape and create pattern. And those are your tools that lay on your table. And the sum of the tools that you work or use and choose tell your story. So if I use color more than I use texture, then really I could say, wow, I love the Caribbean blue feeling of this pelican from Turks and Caicos. And you know how you know it's from Turks and Caicos? Because his drawing is so accurate. They're the only ones that have 4 little feathers at the end of that wing. And that's how you identify that pelican from Turks and Caicos.
Really true?
No, I made it up. But when you draw the shape, I was looking at Teresa for an answer, and she's like, I'm not sure I'm buying this. But when you only have certain things to find, they have to be right. Why do we do the basket exercise where she's working on her positive and negative shapes of the sergeant lady with the basket? Is the negative shape, so just say this is a blue sky, and the negative shape right in here is larger or smaller it could attract more or less attention for that area. So getting the drawing right can change the message without you ever realizing, or should I say, when you don't have the drawing right, you could be slightly changing the message. If that line was a little more diagonal, it could say action and recession. If it's a little straighter, it could say it's calmed down. He's not nervous. So getting the angle of all of these things right. So the reason I got nervous was I had to make sure you understood you have to flip a switch when you're using the reducing filter, stepping out and blocking in, and then you sit down and execute. And I had to make sure that was there. And those are the things I watch. So I like to see how you do the painting. I want to watch the process. It's a math thing. I need to see the homework. Because everyone in this room spent enough time on every painting, it's all going to look good. And you won't tell the difference between any of our works. You just spend enough time. Oh yeah, Vicky will do it a little faster than Margaret. That's for sure. But we'll end at the same place. The turtle will catch up. Okay? So here's what, so I know I have to do an S curve to create movement. So you're looking at the right side, the left side, then the right side. Then you could come to the left side, then the right side, then the left side, and the right side. Then you got to get me to here. And you could use the shadow to get me to here, and then up here, and then down to this side. Then you could bring me to here, and then down to here, and then maybe down to the corner down there. Not a problem. And I think we're good with that, and I think you were good with that. And if we ended our conversation there, we would not be having the class talk, this 2-minute talk. I just can't give a 2-minute talk. I said, how you get me to the other side, and there was no answer. Almost as if there was no thought. Like he wasn't aware of the problem. We're talking like you're not in the room. You understand? I'm talking to the class. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the reason for the talk. So here we are. You, as an artist, have to get me to the other parts. You've picked all these places to tell me where to look. How are you going to lead me there? So he could bring me up along the top to get me here. And then he could use the bottom shadow to bring me to the other side. Now we know the belly of the bird is closer to us, so he could be a little darker in here in a few places to make this come forward more than that. But he'd also could use the pattern repeating the shape. You see all this pattern here repeating that shape? That might have to go. And darkening this or using this to somehow lead me down. And that's where you get creative and you bring me down, because you got to leave this road down here as the chance to come to the other side. And right now this is sort of acting as a road to both to this side. So I don't know if this is too dark or this area is not strong enough, but he has a problem. And that is, he has a sequential order of his strength. And this path, so you got to get me from the beak to the feather. And this is what I call the river. It's a path from these two things. And the path can't be stronger than the two things. So now you're slowing down and you're looking at it and say, okay, I got to guide you from these two things. How am I going to solve this problem? How am I leading you? Because who's responsible once you've put in the halftone? See why my thought process? That was what I'm after. I'm after you making art. Right? We were talking about Nancy Astor and how she was the beginning or sort of start of women standing up and having a fight and a voice and all this stuff. But even when she got to Parliament, she never did anything. Now, I know nothing about her, so we need to leave this and run from that comment right there. But I'm wanting you to do something with your art. I want you to have a voice. I don't want you to get all the way to Parliament and do nothing. Does that make sense? And I don't know why that's important to me, but it is. Or I wouldn't have stopped the class because of what you were doing earlier. I'm joking. But I did stop because of you. Thomas is my wife's assistant teacher. Are you driving yet? Really? Did that just happen this year?
Really? No.
Where you were allowed to drive on the freeway and put your life in jeopardy and things like that?
In the past, like 4 years.
Oh, so your mom she's over you now and said, go drive?
Not quite.
Not quite. Do you just do 285 or you do 85?
I'm 85.
I stay off of 85. It's too dangerous. There are too many people going 5 lanes and making a right. It's not worth it, especially at night. I get in the 3rd lane on 285 and I don't leave it. Because the trucks are in the first 2 lanes and then the nuts are in the 4th lane. And the old people like me in the 3rd lane. That's what I do. It has to be 10 minutes or longer for me to do 85. Or I do 285 around. So I suggest it. Okay, so you understand his problem? You're going to pick the macro areas where to look. Then you know, okay, I got to get you from here to here, but don't stay on one side. So then I'm going to bring you to the other side, to the other side. That means you're painting in areas between to guide, because Sargent said, don't have the viewer jump from spot to spot without painting a path. Put pavers out, make it yellow. Do something that leads me where you want me to look. I think we can do this in every exercise just to make it a habit. There's too many things to think about. It has to become a habit by repeating it. I made a video yesterday, and normally I show that video all week, and I'm not going to do that. So you're going to have to watch next week's video or this weekend's video on what we did with Juliet on having to touch the sculpture piece to realize what farther away is, because she didn't see it in real life. When she touched this person's arm, she didn't realize that the back was farther away. She sees it flat. And therefore she couldn't comprehend the photo. So we had to put her hand on the sculpture, and she had to learn for the first time what really is farther away. And someone in yesterday's class was having trouble learning how to isolate one thing at the Harnett because her eye kept going all over the place, and I couldn't get her to do the one task. I even wrote it down, the yellow book only. And every week she would start over probably 10 or 12 times. 12 times she started over. 13. She said she can't stop looking at everything. Okay, was this morning. And I said, I get it. Not really. I said, it's my job for you to succeed, so let's find another way to teach this. So I took the paper, number 13, and I drew one book on it. That was it. And I gave her the task. 4 values on each side of that book. When you finish, you come to me. Done. And I realized the percentages of artists who enter this class who have this issue might be higher than I'm aware of, Kate. And this could be a new way to teach art for the other half of the world. So I think I'm going to start working on things for them kind. Yeah, like my wife. Couldn't focus on one thing if her life depended on it. Right? And you know, it's really weird. There was a lawyer in the class, a very bright lady. And she was in the class 20 years ago, for about 10 years. I don't know if you know any of the night class. I don't think you do. And when she watched the demo, she says, I get it. I now know why we did those exercises that way 10 years ago. Whoa, this might be, let's just do one thing. So for those people, don't watch the talk I just had. Because this is everything. at once with all the tamales and everything in the air at the same time. Do you throw tamales or not? No. That wasn't a good example. Okay. Now let's do the one thing I want it to have. But it's beautiful, isn't it? But it's not telling a story. That's the difference. And I want more. I want him to tell a story. Does that make sense? What do you think about this over there? Have you calmed down now?